all of a sudden, I go from somebody sitting at their desk to somebody who's not in intensive care. They kept me in open heart surgery recovery room because I had the catheters in all the time for those 3 days. They thawed me out on Friday, and that's the first thing I remember is on Friday night. I remember who was at the hospital. I had no idea what happened. I woke up and there's all these people looking at me. My mom was there, my son, my husband, a couple of friends, and my boss. They're all looking at me and like, where am I and what happened? Because I was pretty beaten up. I mean, they're not gentle with you when they're trying to keep you alive. I mean, you get thrown around and all this. And I've had broken ribs from this in the ER. So they told me that I had a cardiac arrest. I'm like, oh, I had a heart attack. They said, no, you had a cardiac arrest, which is very different. So I got out of intensive care on Sunday, and on Monday, Don Wayne, who was my cardiologist, came in and said, all right, I'm going to explain this to you. And I've known Don for about 15 years through a pool we used to belong to and Warren Hills High School. The funny thing about that is when I was brought out on the Friday night thawed out of my coma, out of my hypothermia, there's all these people. He sticks his head in and he said, do you know who I am? And I looked there and said, Rick Wayne. And he smiled because he knew I knew who he was, because Rick is his brother. And I couldn't have given him a wrong answer if I didn't know the right answer. So I thought for a minute, I was like, no, that's not right, you know. So he was happy because I'm through this with no brain damage. I literally went for 3 days with no heart. I was on a pump. So the bottom line is, I went from normal to being a heart patient in 5 minutes. And now, after, one of the interesting things was we thought this was going to be a one-time event. Never happened again. Well, a week after that Tuesday, I did it again in the hospital in the morning while I was asleep. And I woke up to guys with the tool cart and a tube, and people throwing blankets and stuff off my hospital bed. And I'm like, what are you guys going to do? And they said, well, you recapped again. And I'm like, you're not putting the tube in me a second time. I just get over the first time, you know. No, we're not doing that. So the decision was made, since I blew the statistics out by the second thing in a week, that we would put a defibrillator in. And it's been like car insurance for me. I don't have to worry that I'm ever going to fall on the ground or have somebody, I mean, you know, if it goes off again, yeah, that's a scenario I'll have to have somebody help me. But I don't have to worry about a coworker, my son, my husband, somebody being there and go, oh my God, she doesn't have a pulse. What do we do? Or the whole scenario, we don't know whether this happened or that happened. So my diagnosis is what's called broken heart syndrome. It is stress-related cardiomyopathy. There's some discussion as to whether it has to do with, you know, your stress hormones. I've had a lot of tragedy in my life with the loss of my son, a high-pressure job for years. All of that was my own choosing with the job. That's what I've done my whole life. To me, it was high pressure, but that's what I do. So with that diagnosis, it's been kind of enlightenment to a lot of people that you can have a heart attack, or not a heart attack, a cardiac arrest caused by stress. There's some basic hormones in your body that control fight or flight. Mine are probably screwed up from years of dealing with not just my son's death, but his leukemia. My godson died. Suddenly one of my closest friends was murdered. Those things affect your body from the core, no matter what you do to take care of yourself. So that's kind of my story. I'm sticking with it, even though I wasn't awake from those days. Every now and then, I ask my son about stuff. I'll be like, tell me this. He's like, oh, I've told you this before. My husband was so mad at me because I asked him 5 or 6 times, who played in the tournament and who won the night before? He was like, I'm not telling you this again. The other thing I asked him was, how did my car get home from work? We drove and flew, you know. So it's kind of a strange, different scenario. And for me, it's really good to see some friendly faces because it's been a real kind of Duncan and Pool thing for me, going from, you know, I had had blood work and a physical in March of 2011. Everything's fine. We're cool. I'd been tired, you know, worried about the upcoming anniversary of my son's death. Doctors were like, you're cool, everything's good. Blood work was great. Blood pressure was really low, really healthy. And here I am today. So I'd love to talk to anybody who has different kinds of, or has questions about the stress-related stuff, because I've done a lot of work on that. It's not very common, but it does happen, to the best of us.
I just want to thank you, because first of all, I know nobody likes getting up and giving talks like that in front of the crowd, especially in a history of heart-related stress events. So it was great of you to get up there and do that. I wish I had that on tape, because we get some patients who...
It'll be on YouTube.
We get some patients who, they're so afraid of getting a shock, and they have no idea what would happen in the event they didn't have a device.
That's
and what
true.
you went through.
I would rather have a shock than have CPR, because my organ ribs hurt so bad for so long, and every time I sat up or moved, I thought it was awful. It was really one of those painful things I've experienced as a burden. I woke up and I was like, was I in a bar fight somewhere? I was all beaten up, my teeth were chipped.
Now you're speaking a language I understand.
Hey, I'm in the mortgage industry.
Does heart disease run in your family by any chance?
I'm adopted, we don't know.
Okay.
I would think, now, this is not typical heart disease. I have no blockages.
That's right.
My echoes are normal.
It's like all of a sudden the heart changes. It changes. It's like a ballooning out, actually, one of the ventricles. And so the heart, as a pump, doesn't pump as effectively anymore. So you have the cardiomyopathy.
My ejection fraction was not high enough to sustain life. My
It's
body,
now.
oh, yeah, it's normal. But, you know, I'm not allowed to go back to my old job. I've had to change what I'm doing. My doctor has done everything in his power to see if he can get me not to go back to work, but he's not that good. But no, it's a very different situation, and it's good for me to see other people who live their lives with ICD. For me, it's not been a big deal except the coast.
What was your blood pressure the day before? You said it was taken, it was low.
It was 110/72.
Okay.
I mean, it was well within normal.
Okay.
And,
Do you know what your ejection fraction was?
It was below 20.
Below 20?
Yeah. That plays a role also.
But, you know, I didn't know what an ejection fraction was.
But it was below 20 when all this happened to her when she was in the hospital.
Yeah,
I would say on April 5th,
it was
the ejection fraction.
I had no ejection before that. Yeah, I was not high enough to sustain life, is what I was told. And that was good enough for me. I don't need a number. So, anybody has any questions? Ask me, because I'd like to learn and share a little bit from everybody else too. As far as being afraid of the heart.